Oh, here, don't get Sheila.
Thank you.
Baruch atah
Adonai,
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'zivanim la'aseh divrei Torah. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so today is the last of the sessions. Wow, hard to believe, 9 of them we've done, or I've done.
Bonus.
There's the bonus, yes, the bonus class. Yeah, extra credit. And one of the great challenges of all religions is what, all right?
Watching this.
One of the great challenges of all religions is dealing with the idea of how the transcendent, that which is infinite, is, well, first of all, does create the finite. How are we created, number one? But that which is created, meaning us, how can the finite communicate with the transcendent? How could that be? And that is the real challenge. And beautifully in Judaism, we have over these weeks, hopefully to some degree, obviously, more, sometimes more, some one share, sometimes less, because obviously this is just an overview. Hi, Carol. This is just an overview, and certainly not meant to in any way. You shouldn't walk away from this thinking, well, now I know how to be a Jew. That's not true. You know how to do that already. However, the fact is that Judaism has given us the tools to be able to communicate with the infinite, to open up the channels, as they call it, to open up the gates, the doors to the infinite by what? Tefillah, prayer, Torah, and study, and mitzvot, the doing of these deeds that are not simply good deeds. It really, I think, is a mistake to call, remember, a mitzvah a good deed, because let's say Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts do good deeds, but God is not involved in them. You get a merit badge, okay? God wants us to do the good deeds that we do. These deeds, these mitzvot, and how many are there? 613, 365 of them written in the negative, thou shalt nots, more not thou shalt nots than thou shalt, and therefore 245 of them are in the positive, such as you will honor your father and mother. Okay, so this is the challenge. So today I'm going to do a couple of things. I have to try to end about 4:20 or so. So let's take a prayer book, everybody, the read book here. And let's talk about tefillah. You could ask the question, can't you pray anytime you feel like praying? Yes, of course. I love Fiddler on the Roof, right? He's going through all that stuff with his kids, with the girls, and he's in the movie, certainly, he's walking all on, master of the world, why are you doing this to me? Or whatever he said. Okay. If I were a rich man, the idol, let's all sing. Okay. But the fact is, yes, of course, you can pray anytime you want to pray. Nachman of Breslov, the great Hasidic master from the 18th century in the Ukraine, he developed this process of prayer / meditation called hitbodedut, which means talking to God in seclusion all by yourself. And many of the breast lovers, as they're called, and there's hundreds of thousands of them throughout the world, and they practice hitbodedut. Hitbodedut, what Nachman did was, of course, he was in the Ukraine, and he actually backed onto a forest. At night, he would go out into the forest all by himself, and like I'm talking to you out loud now, he would talk to God out loud. And at least for 1 hour a night, he'd talk to God. And he'd ask God on the hitbodedut, you can talk to God about anything. So you can say, yeah, you know something, I got a flat tire today. Can you help me with that? I need some help with that. It was a really lousy day. Or whatever. It doesn't matter because God listens to everything. And this is a form of actually meditation. Normally, think meditation is, okay, om, shalom, or whatever, okay. But This is considered a form of meditation because why? In meditation, you are moving out, using your body through your body into the infinite. And this is actually, any of you want to try this, this is called good therapy, right? The best thing about
I'm
this,
just listening to a class. Go ahead.
I've been to therapists.
Is
Guess
yoga
what? It doesn't cost you money.
Yeah.
But it charges you.
Yeah, because I love it.
And
Not
therefore
getting
you
enough
can just talk.
participation. So we're gonna finish out the year till April or May. And
Judy,
it won't be next year.
Judy, if you need to speak, would you
Yes.
Yeah.
silence yourself?
Okay.
Thank you.
So you can
Sure.
just talk to God, in this way called hitbodedut. But on the other hand, Judaism has developed, and remember, we talked about this way back when, and that is when the temple in Jerusalem still stood, the first temple, certainly the second temple, there were 3 times a day that the Kohanim, the priests of ancient Israel, would offer prayers to God. They would take the animals, sacrifice them, cook them on the barbecue, called the Mizbeach, the altar, and then what do they do with them? They ate them, okay? So therefore you had what? Prayers when? Morning, afternoon, and evening. Shacharit, Mincha, and Mariv. But when the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed in the year 70 of the Common Era, the second one by the Romans, is that the genius of the rabbis, headed by they all were geniuses, but certainly by a Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who actually, as the war was going on against the Romans, they snuck, according to the tradition, they snuck him out in a coffin. They told the Romans, he's our leading rabbi, our head sage is dead. We're going to bury him up in the northern part of Israel in a place called Yavna. And they snuck his body in a coffin. And then, of course, he popped out of the coffin because he wasn't dead. And he started an academy of rabbis saying, what are we going to do now? And they had to reinvent Judaism, use a more modern terminology. They had to reimagine Judaism. That's what they did. So they said, well, there are no longer any Kohanim. There's no longer a temple in Jerusalem. It's gone, kaput. So let's make 3 prayer services a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. Of course, we're not going to be offering sacrifices because you can only offer sacrifices in the Holy Temple. And so until the 3rd one is built in our day by Mashiach, we cannot do that. However, we can pray. Therefore, our new Mizbeach is where? In our hearts. So the rabbis also said that our home is a mikdash ma'at, a sanctuary in miniature. And the table that you eat on at home is a holy altar to God because you're eating. And eating is essential in Judaism because by eating, why do we say brachot? Why do we say blessings? Because we're giving thanks to God for the food that we're eating that will enable us to live, to perform mitzvot. Okay? There were certainly some extreme rabbis. You can read stories about them. Someone told me the other day that there was this Hasidic rabbi who was a bit over the top in this situation. And he decided to study Torah 24 hours a day. So he stopped sleeping, he stopped eating, and guess what? About 8 days later, he died. Okay. That is not acceptable in Judaism. It's not normative in Judaism, but this Hasidic rabbi, whatever. Okay. So the fact is, 3 times a day, just like the Kohanim did. But then you could say, well, but I'm not a Kohen. Larry's not a Kohen, are you, Larry? No, okay. And by the way, you'll know, women, sorry, in traditional Judaism, you cannot be a Kohen. You remember, being Jewish is transmitted through the line of the mother, but whether you're a Kohen, an Israelite, or a Levite, or an Israelite, the tribe is based upon your father. And it's transmitted through the male line only. So a female cannot be a Kohen. However, in Reform, these tribes don't mean anything at all because we don't have a temple in Jerusalem. But also in conservative Judaism, it gets kind of blurred. So down the road here at that other place on Sheshalom, they actually will call women up, and let's say, Sheila, you are the daughter of a Kohen. They would say, what's your name in Hebrew, Sheila?
Sora.
Okay, so they say, Sarah, Bat, what's your father's name?
Abraham.
Abraham HaKohen. Okay, and they can call you up with a Kohen position because when in the Torah, for the Aliyahs, for the blessings of the Torah on Shabbat or holidays, the first position is always given the honor of the Kohen, then the Levite, and then everybody else. The commoners, the rest of us Israelites. And so how they get away with this, I'm not going to talk about conservative Judaism. They're basically no different than Reform Judaism because they're kind of doing what they want to do when it's appropriate or the congregation wants to. It's not okay. But leaving that aside, is that the rabbis then said, well, guess what? We pray 3 times a day. Why? Because guess what? Most of the day, and I'm not going to ask you to give personal testimony to this. How many times during the day do you think about God at all?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. Well, most people don't think much about God, except when they want a good parking spot. And they say, oh, God, help me in this park. I can't stand riding around here.
No
I don't want
comment.
to. No comment. Yeah. Okay. But most people, the furthest thing from them, whatever God means to them, is thinking about God. But the fact is, and you've heard, those of you come to services certainly have heard me talk about this already endlessly. And the fact is that as we are finite beings, hopefully searching, was it the famous, searching for Godot? Yeah, okay. Is that we're searching for God in our lives. Well, guess what? We have to be there for God just as much as we expect God to be there for us, which means we got to be there. So morning and afternoon and evening, there are 3 prayers of a day, 3 prayer services of a day. So that if you were Orthodox, and I hate to say this, ladies, if you were an Orthodox male, okay, or if you were Barbara Streisand dressed up as Yentl, you then would go to synagogue 3 times a day. And basically what they end up doing is most of them obviously combine the afternoon to the evening, so it's not 3 specific prayer times. And you would offer these prayers. What then begins to happen is you begin to develop what we call a routine. The sad part of it is many routines become what? Habits, okay, by rote. And you don't want to do that because another important part of the Jewish teaching is a Hebrew word that is called kavanah, or intention. When we do things with mindfulness or intention, or kavanah in Hebrew, is that we are doing things much more effectively and always bringing more meaning into the things we do. We ain't just doing them. Okay, so let's open the prayer book and turn to the table of contents. Some of you have Hebrew opening books, some of us English opening books.
Doreen and Judy, it's
Oh.
the old Gates of Prayer, Gates of Blue, if you have it.
If not, you can just follow along, certainly. It will be very explainable. The rabbis, again, 2,000 years ago, the prayer book was created. It doesn't matter whether it's Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, Reconstructionist.
Rabbi, sorry, everybody's asking the page number again.
Table of contents. Yeah, so it should be pretty much to the beginning. You first have the obviously title page, the next page, table of contents. Every single Jewish service that these rabbis created follows the exact same outline. Every single one of them. And it doesn't matter, Reform, Conservative. By the way, do you know what Reconstructionist Judaism is?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I can't explain it.
And then I'll do this fast because I don't want to get distracted. But I distract myself anyway, so what's the difference? Okay. In the 1920s, there was a Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, he should rest in peace. And he was an Orthodox rabbi, but he realized that life was changing. And if you think way back to Maimonides and these other figures that I mentioned to you before, they had to try to keep Jews as Jews because the world about us is very, very attractive. So Maimonides had to attract Jews who were being impressed by Greek philosophy. And so he wrote the very famous Guide for the Perplexed. So constantly we have to be able to appeal to others as well. So for instance, Rabbi Zalman Shabtai Shalomi, he should rest in peace, a modern rabbi who was from a Hasidic background, began the development of the Jewish renewal movement today to appeal to Jews who are going to Buddhism and praying and going all the time. We termed it the Shalom, okay? And appeal to thousands of Jews today, okay? So the fact is that Mordechai Kaplan said, you know something? in the world of the 1920s, what are the major movements that are affecting everyone, but certainly Judaism? They are what? Psychology and particularly sociology. Freud and whomever. Okay, there are lots of sociologists, but anyway. And thereby, and also Einstein. Okay, science. Okay. So he reconstructed Judaism based upon the principles of psychology and sociology. So in his very famous book, Judaism Without Supernaturalism, said that there is no supernatural being that is called God. His definition of God is the power within me that makes my own salvation. What does that mean? Who are you praying to? I'm praying to the higher capacity in myself. So that in the prayer service, when I say, Dear God, author of source of peace, help to make peace in the world. There's no being out there. There's no transcendent anything out there. I'm praying to the higher part of me to create peace. I'm inspiring myself. Now, most of us wouldn't totally disagree with that possibly. Then what's the point of praying though? I mean, what does the prayer book mean? Okay. Also, take for instance, why should I wear a yarmulke? Why should I not drive on Shabbat? Why should I not eat Why should I eat kosher? Because there ain't no God to command me to do those things, but I do them because this is sociology. It's what Jews do, and I've done for thousands of years. And guess what? By wearing this in my head, it identifies me as being this. When I visited some friends of ours, palm chasers, I call them, from our community, who are in the hospital over Delray, I put my yarmulke on, and I'm standing there. Oh God, I hate to use this word, but real. Sometimes you get these volunteers, God bless them, at the hospital in the information desk, and they don't even know what finger to. Oh my God, this is really bad. But anyway, leaving aside that comment about this wonderful woman, God bless her, she's volunteering.
Palm chaser?
What?
What's a palm chaser?
I live in Palm Chase communities. I call palm
okay.
chasers, cascaders, or Valencia, whatever. Okay, anyway, is that I'm wearing my yarmulke. So I'm standing there while this woman is trying to figure out, she got it totally messed up completely, my ID and everything else. But there's this guy behind me, and he says to me, well, isn't it terrible what's going on between Israel and Hamas? What do you think of that? Okay, so if I didn't have this on, I'm assuming he wouldn't have said anything to me. Okay, all right. So the fact is, that's what Mordecai Kaplan did. He reconstructed Judaism based upon the things that were important in the 1920s. Interestingly enough, Mordecai Kaplan, till the day he died at, I think, 100 or 101, lived a fully 100% Orthodox Jewish way of life. You couldn't tell any difference between him and someone who goes to a completely Orthodox synagogue. But the fact is, he did it from a different vantage point. They did it because they were taught, and if they did, they believed that God said it, therefore you do it. Whereas Mordecai Kaplan did it because it's a Jewish thing to do. Interesting enough. And that's reconstruction of Judaism in 5 minutes. Okay, so no matter what version of Judaism you are to practice, and interestingly enough, many people, even here at Temple Sinai, have come up to me and said, what is this English translation? What is that? Okay, the Hebrew doesn't change, but the English does, because the English is attempting in our prayer book to offer different translations. Some of them are literal translations, other of them are figurative, some of them are poetical, some of them are more philosophical. But in this one here, there were 12 different Friday night services. Okay, the Hebrew is the same in all the services, but one of them doesn't even, I forget which one, which I never ever used up north, B'nai Israel up north, doesn't use the word God at all. It's very Reconstructionist. God is the power. Okay. Yeah, Unitarian also. Yeah, most Unitarians are Jews anyway, right? A lot of it. I spoke at Unitarian fellowships a couple of times, and all of them came up to me and said, "Boy, if you had been my rabbi, I never would have come here." Love it. Anyway, the fact is, the Hebrew doesn't change, which is why, for instance, if you go to an Orthodox service, you could after a while say, "Man, this is boring." It's the same Hebrew prayers every single week. This is where you have to bring kavanah in. You have to bring yourself and what that means into it, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So let's begin here at the contents. Notice, there are weekday services, there are Shabbat services, there are holiday services, and there's an entire different book, Lila. Larry, show her the table of contents page, please. She's going the other way. I think, yeah. Yeah, as I said, some books are Hebrew opening, others English, which doesn't help us at all. Okay, anyway, and then there's a whole nother prayer book called the Machzor, which is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, because they're special prayers. Anyway, notice, when does the Jewish day begin?
Friday night.
At sundown, or any day of the week, begins sundown. So notice weekday services, it doesn't say morning, evening, it says evening, morning, and then at the very end of the next column, page 111, afternoon service. See it? Everyone okay? Very good. Okay, so let us turn to page 31 and see what we find here. Every single Jewish service is in the following diagram. If I had a chalkboard or something, and when we get really developed here, I'll be able to write in this, like you see these TV shows now, right? That'd be really cool. Lynn, can we get that?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Next week.
Excellent. That'd be real. I really love that.
It'd be like Steve Kornacki.
Or what's it called? The Matrix, right?
Oh, yeah. That too.
That'd be so cool. Okay, anyway. Is that who are you? When there are in many synagogues, you see the words imprinted or engraved onto the ark. Know before whom you stand. Remember, these prayers were written 2,000 years ago. And what was the earthly power? The Roman emperor. Okay, the king. Okay. And thereby, when you go into the palace of a king, you need to what? You first have to recognize the king. The king is the one in charge. And so what do you do when you walk before a king? You bow. Okay. I've been practicing this when I see Lynn or Betty. I've been told to go like this. Okay. They're the queens of the palace here, right? Okay. And I love that from the crown. I learned that from the crown. Okay, when they're always going like, okay, what's better than this, you know? Okay, I love, right? Right?
Most of the
Yes,
time.
most of the time I bow. Okay, like that. Okay, but I learned that from the crown. But that's the model that they were working with. So yes, you could say, isn't this archaic? But this is what? Tradition, yada, da, 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 da. It's tradition. Okay. Because you can say we don't have kings anymore, and whatnot. But to understand, remember, we are a little nothing. Okay. And if you think about kings of ancient times, is that they don't like you, cut off his head, put him in jail. I could just step on you like an ant. Okay. Yeah, exactly, off with your head. So we're a little nothing in terms of who we are. And again, we are trying to bring ourselves into the presence of the infinite one so that we can communicate with the infinite. And the infinite is not a he, the infinite is not a she, the infinite could be an it, but the word it is so icky, it, okay? But that which is greater than us, we'll say. So what I need to do is, most of the services begin with the words from the Psalms or certain prayers by which we acknowledge God as the creator, which quite often are selections from the biblical book of Psalms.
Bad allergy.
Yeah, bad time. You gonna go?
I wanted to say, but I'm gonna be coughing.
That's okay. I love the coffee.
It's an allergy, but the doctor of everything else.
Oh. That's okay. This is gonna be important. Oh.
I wear a mask,
Unless you're,
but, that's contagious, right? I have an allergy to that.
unless you feel too uncomfortable, then I'll just do this for you privately. You wanna go?
I don't want it to be disruptive.
Oh, that's okay.
What?
You couldn't be. Well, it could be. but-
We have a
That,
Do have a mask.
we have them inside. Hey, there she is. What's that?
Indoor allergies.
Yeah, well, there's so much mustiness in here. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But anyway, is that therefore you recognize God's presence. So for instance, let's leave the evening service alone for a moment. And let's see, over here.
It's interesting. I always thought the phrase, the English part was a direct translation of the Hebrew, but you're saying, no, it could be anything like. That's interesting.
You look at any book, you won't see two
And that's,
of them.
and that's why there's so many variations in the English. Yeah, because there's simply different ways of reading the Hebrew and poetically, or
Ah,
some are literal. In Mishkan Tefillah, there's always one of the paragraphs which is literal, and then there are other paragraphs which are more figurative.
uh-huh.
Okay, so okay, woman's,
Oh,
I'll speak to you. I don't talk to you about the other thing.
Take
Okay.
care, feel
Okay,
better.
feel better.
Because I love this class.
Feel better.
Oh,
Feel better.
okay, love you too. Bye.
Hi, Carol.
Okay, so after the initial prayers are done, words from the Psalms giving thanks to God, praise to God, welcoming God, the transcendent one, in various words, in various ways, is that the first beginning prayer is the Baruch Hu. Now, Judaism does have a choreography to it. And the choreography would be, I taught this at one of the services way back when I started here. And when you're bowing before God, it's not this, it's not that, but rather the word Baruch or Baruchu, to bless, is actually Bet Resh Final Chaf, actually means to bend one's knees. So it is actually a movement of the entire body. Baruchu. You bend your knee and you come over like this. The rabbis liken this to a sheaf of wheat or grain in the wind. And we're moving with the prayers. And those of you who have been to a traditional service, and you see them, what is called davening, which is called shuckling, is that you're moving to the experience of the Hebrew words. It doesn't work with English. It's very hard to really have a movement with Hebrew, but with English. But rather, v'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavecha, v'chol nafshecha, v'chol meodecha, v'hayu hadivarim, and you move back and forth. But let's leave aside the davening or constantly moving back and forth. But the idea is, they say in some of the sources, that the moving back and forth, which you can see in Orthodox services, more traditional people sometimes, it's like that grain of wheat in the wind. And the wind is God's moving through you and with you. Prayer in Judaism is not just up here in the top of your kepis, okay, although it could be, but rather it is your whole being. One rabbi said you should pray as if this is the last day, the last moment of your life, and all is at stake. That's pretty powerful to do, right? And not most people
And
can.
somewhere in the Mishkan, it is pray as if the world depended upon you.
Yeah. And that's pretty hard to do, to take that seriously. But guess what? In Judaism, and certainly in Kabbalah, yes, every thought you have, every action you take, the whole world can depend upon it. It's sort of like what's considered to be in physics, what they call this, what do they call it? I forget. Anyway, the pebble effect. You obviously take in that beautiful Lake Temple Sinai here, right?
Not here.
Does the water come back yet?
It came back too high.
Pension.
Oh, too
It came
okay.
back too high.
Okay, anyway, if you drop a pedal in the water, the ripple effect. If you could believe that every single thought and action you take has an effect upon the cosmos, that makes your actions and whatnot worthy of your taking seriously. There is what I can't call it belief, so I'm not sure what you would call it, called the Lamed Vavnik, the 36 righteous people in the world. If you remember, the number 18 is a number, okay, 18 Chai means life, and that's because in Hebrew, every single Hebrew letter has a numerical equivalent. So the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Aleph, so Aleph is 1. The 8th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Chet, which is 8, okay. Chet is 8, Yud is 10, 10 and 8 is 18, and the Chet and Yud spell the word Chai, which means life. So therefore, double Chai is, of course, double life, or 36. According to this, whatever you want to call it, the belief is that there are 36 Lamed Vavniks, okay, because 30 is Lamed, and Vav is 6, which is double Chai. There are 36 righteous people in the world for whom the world continues to exist. The key to them, however, according to this traditional belief, is that they don't know who they are. So theoretically, 2, 4, 6, 8, there's 8 of us in this room. We could be 8 of the 36, and the whole world depends upon what we do and think and what we say. Well, that's a lot of responsibility, right, Hannah? Well, actually, you might want to rethink, the whole gizmo, the whole business here,
Except
right?
you don't know that you're
A
one.
lot
You
of
don't know you
pressure,
won.
Rabbi,
So
a
it's
lot
not,
of pressure.
the person doesn't feel the responsibility.
No, but it's therefore we all have to live as if we were the Lamed Vav.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And that could make it totally neurotic, okay, on one hand. On the other hand, it could make you think about the fact is, guess what? What you do and what you say does make a difference. Anyone here a teacher, ever a teacher? Okay, so Sheila, right? Teachers can destroy a child or affect a child to become the greatest person in the whole world for the rest of their lives, right? You know this, okay. All right.
Or parents.
Yeah,
Parents
parents,
can do it.
obviously, yeah. Or as I think I told this one the other day, when there was this woman was going into surgery and she asked the doctor, "What is my chance of coming through the operation alive?" And the doctor told her 1%. Okay, that's not a good thing to say, okay, because it totally destroyed her. Okay,
Is this a true story?
Yeah.
A doctor actually said that?
and she said, "Give me a rabbi now." Okay, it was a 21-hour operation. This was 1970s. She had a cancer in the aorta and removal of pancreas, which in those days was like, it was like experimental stuff. And it turned out to be this Dr. John Fortner of Sloan Kettering, who was one of these super duper surgeons. He was like the first person to ever do a liver transplant for cancer. And he was one of these guys who really just tried to, these people are obviously, it's either this, you're going to die. So the people would say, okay, I'm willing to try it. So anyway, I'm assuming that she probably asked him this question before this, but as she was being wheeled into the operating room, she asked him this and he said 1%, which he shouldn't have said. She simply should have said, well, I'll just do the best I can to get you through this.
Yeah, really, right.
And she said, well, I want to see a rabbi. So I happened to be in the hospital that day. So I was called down to the operating room and I said a prayer with her, held her hand. And well, she did make it through the operation. So 1% is 100%. Unfortunately, she died 5 weeks later, never left the intensive care unit. But she made it through the operation. So what can you say, right? Anyway, the fact is that we therefore have our whole being involved in prayer, because guess what? Everything we say, everything hangs in the balance, and how we do things might make a difference. So and you've seen me, other people here at Temple, we face the open ark for the Baruch Hu. We bow because we're bowing before the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. But again, it's not from the waist thing, but rather it is from the knees and over. Baruch, Baruch Hu, okay? Now.
They tell you in this book.
Yeah.
Just how.
Yeah, then footnotes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as we turn the page to page 32, we now have recognized God's presence. And by the way, what we didn't look at in other services in here, in the traditional service, they would be there. It opens up with psalms and words of praising God and thanking God, recognizing God as the creator. Then you have the Baruch Hu. Just like, for instance, you go before a king. Oh, king, you're so wonderful. You're so great. You're so powerful. You're the most incredible thing in all of the universe and life, etc. And my life is in your hands. Blessed are you, dear God, dear king. Okay. Oh, Larry. Okay. You heard this. There was this thing in the 2,000-year-old man shtick with Mel Brooks, and Mel Brooks is interviewing the 2,000-year-old man, and he says to him, "Were you there when the first person prayed?" And of course, Mel Brooks says, "Oh yes, I was the first person ever who said a prayer." So the interviewer says, Carl Reiner, right? Yeah.
Right.
Carl Reiner says to Mel Brooks, "Well, what was the first prayer?" Well, he said, "I was walking through the fields and all of a sudden I came across this giant whose name was Phil. And the first prayer ever uttered was, 'Oi, Phil, don't step on me.'" But that was the first prayer ever. Okay. I love that.
But I'm bummed.
Dumb.
I love it.
Anyway, on the next page, you have at least 2 prayers which give thanks to God for the day itself. Because imagine the infinite, and remember the 2 triangles in the Jewish stars are talked about. The descending triangle, the infinite, has to come right here, and time and space. So therefore, I have to give thanks to God for the evening. Notice what the word prayer, the end of the prayer is. On the, let's see. Blessed is the Lord our God, whose word makes evening fall, page 32. See, middle of the page, before Revelation. Blessed is the Lord who makes evening fall. Mariv Aravim. We say this on Friday nights at temple.
I don't see,
Okay, what? You don't say it?
I don't see that.
You don't see it.
In the middle of the page.
Right there.
Right.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
okay. So that therefore,
Now I see.
I thank God for that. Guess what? In the morning service, guess what it says? Blessed are you, O God, who brings on the morning. Yotzer Hama Orot, who creates the lights of the morning. Wakes me up. Okay. The afternoon service is a little bit different. But the morning and the evening services, the next part after the Baruch Hu, you bring in the day. The same way as, obviously, on Yom Kippur, on Sukkot, you'll have special prayers in this section of the service, bringing in time and space. Because again, we have to get God close to me. And that's a big challenge. Okay, so now we turn the page. Oh, no, it's actually page 33.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question or am I gonna
No,
interrupt?
go ahead.
I'm still stuck on what you said. Why is the English translation not even close to the Hebrew then? I mean, why? I mean, if the
Actually, this one
Hebrew
is
is
pretty
always,
close. No, this actually is pretty close.
I'm saying, if the Hebrew is always the same, why are the texts so different?
Boring,
How
because
many
modern
times-
Jews want something different all the time. That's
Not all
boring.
of us, not all of
Oh,
us.
just- well, yeah, but
How many
most.
times have I asked you about the Via Hafta, how it keeps changing?
Yeah, that's
I
why.
love the old version, lie us down, rise us up. It's beautiful, it was wonderful, and now it's all
Yeah,
modernized.
yeah, because the
Yeah.
modern, non-traditional Jews want to always have something new, be excited, be turned on, and so they have all these different translations, all these different meanings.
Yeah.
All right, so let's remember to some extent with the first Reform Prayer Book, and then this one that was the successor. It was created at a time that was similar to German church translations. And the German church, some of those translations were all of the, and English as well, layest down as opposed to.
King
put
James
it-
Version, King
Yeah.
James
I
Bible.
love that. I
Well,
love
that's,
that.
but most people today would not go for that.
They don't, I mean, that.
That's what it
takes me
is.
Back to my bar
Right,
mitzvah.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
Grew up.
that's a lot of years ago.
We
but-
have
Yeah.
that prayer book here.
I
I'm
know
going
you
to
did.
give
You
it
showed
to you.
me.
All right.
You did show it. to
Yeah.
me,
yeah, for those,
But we don't use it.
no,
And that goes back to your question that the Hebrew, I keep saying, the Hebrew is the same. Why must we change?
because modern people want that.
Not all.
Well, you're an old fogey. No, most modern people want it. Okay. All right, let's continue.
Guilty.
Page 33. We've now done something, notice the Shema. So we've now said that there's this divine being that we recognize for the Baruch Hu. And now in this time and place, God has created this day, God has created this time of the day. And now therefore I'm going to expand into the infant. But now for the first time really, I'm what? Hear, O Israel, hear, O Hannah, hear, O Larry, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Don't you know that? Okay. So now what we're doing is we are taking us now as a people and bringing in the experience, the belief and oneness of God. So now we're beginning now to do what? We're now personalizing the relationship. That's the key to prayer. Okay. So now then the Via Hafta prayer that Larry loves so much in the Hebrew, and that is what? We take this relationship with God, but what do we do with
Can we
it?
go back to Shema for a minute?
Yeah.
What is the reason why, and again, I was raised in such a different atmosphere. We didn't do this, we didn't close our eyes, we always said was the Shema, and we always stood up. In South Florida, I've been to congregations, they don't stand up,
They
they
don't
sit down.
stand really for the
No.
Shema?
There is no, if you were Orthodox, most Orthodox synagogues, they do not stand for the Shema.
This is
Mo-
the
most
Reform
conserv-
Temple on Hood Road up in.
Oh,
in
Reform,
Palm Beach
but-
Mountain, in
but-
PGA.
But almost almost all Orthodox synagogues, they do not stand for the Shema. You don't have to stand. You're not required to stand for the Shema. The Baruch Hu you are, the Shema you're not.
Why?
Because you're not praying to God. Who are you praying to? You're not praying to anybody.
Praying to
The Shema
yourself.
is not a prayer. It's a statement of belief. Hear, O Larry, the Lord our God. Don't you know that, Larry? Okay. Lila, don't you know God is one? Hear, O Lila. Yeah. I'm not God. If God knows anything, God knows God is one. I'll tell God is one. God is knows God's God one.
Okay, why?
Because you're supposed to concentrate on the words. And actually, in a traditional synagogue, they won't put their hand there, so they'll even take the talit and they'll wrap themselves in the talit sometimes, or cover their eyes.
Or close my eyes?
Or close your eyes. I close my eyes. I don't put my hand on my eyes, but I close my eyes when I say it. You're supposed to be able, and I also visualize the four-letter name of God, but that's another thing. But the fact is that you don't want to be distracted.
That's
At
why,
that moment.
that's why you close your eyes.
That's what some people do.
Right.
Oh.
But you, and by the way, if in the Babylonian Talmud, remember there were two Talmuds. In the Babylonian Talmud, written in the year 500, somewhere in Brachot, probably in the beginning part, it said, "You all stand." In the Jerusalem Talmud, it said, "Be seated." And so there's variations even 2,000 years ago in these things. But this prayer is not being said to God; it's being said to each other. In truth, and I've thought about maybe one Friday night I'll do this. You should really turn to your neighbor and say to your neighbor, "Shema Hana, the Lord our God." Shema Hana, Adonai Echad. Okay, we should talk to each other about it because that's what the prayer is.
Oh.
Now, the next part, the V'ahavta prayer, is basically saying, well, now I recognize God. What am I supposed to do with God? And God wants us to do what? To love God with all our mind, with all our heart, with all our soul. And of course, describes these different things, which ultimately became the rituals of the doorpost, the mezuzah, the tefillin, etc. Because the thing is, the beauty of Judaism is it takes ideas and translates them into mitzvot action, which is really quite extraordinary. Now, we now look to page 34.
So do people rise for the V'ahavta? No.
I've seen some people do that, but
Some congregations.
some people do.
People stand all through the V'ahavta
Yeah.
and just be seated.
Yeah, I mean, there are variations in all of these kind of things. It doesn't really, in some places, it does say like the Baruch Hu, you have to stand. The Tefillah, the next part we're gonna get to, you stand. But otherwise, standing, sitting, it really is based upon your custom and how you're brought up.
Is that because rabbis have reached a point in their lives, they don't want to do stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down? Because when in some institutions of,
Or geriatrics.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
now, I never heard it before, but now if you must, or if you can, now it's almost universal. I hear that all the
but,
time.
Yeah.
but that is,
Can't.
Well, because you want to give the options
Right,
for people.
right. But I
Yeah,
never did hear
well,
that before.
I want to say to the streamers, you may now get up from your recliner. Okay,
Right.
now, at the bottom page 34. Again, we're going to expand this because we are the people of Israel, and you see how this becomes very important in the next set of prayers. The Mi Chamocha we're coming to. The Mi Chamocha, which we're going to be doing as services this week, as a part of our Torah reading, is from the Song of the Sea. And you've all heard me say this enough times. It is a song of freedom sung by the Hebrews after they experienced getting through the Red Sea and experiencing the freedom, and therefore, Mi Chamocha Ba'ali Manai, who is like you, O Lord, among the gods that are worshipped, for giving us our freedom. But again, and I point this out to you, is that in ancient times, in the earliest times of our history, our ancestors were not monotheists, but rather monolaters. They believed that we have one God, but they understood other cultures had many gods. And therefore, our God won out. Our God is more powerful than all the other gods that are. That's what the prayer says. It's only much later on we talked about this, of the period of the prophets, that Judaism then said, guess what? There ain't no other gods. They're all fakers. Okay, all fake news gods. Okay, our God is the only real God. And the others are nothing. Okay, but notice what happens here then, the people of Israel, and you'll see how important this becomes. By the way, the one that's on page 35, Divine Providence, is just for the nighttime service. Now, let's go to page 36. The Kaddish is one of the more interesting of the prayers in the service. The Kaddish was originally said after after studying, let's say Talmud or something, in the rabbis and the teachings from ancient times, after studying it, and wanting to give thanks to God for the lessons that were learned from the rabbis of the past. And so you would say, Yitzchadal v'Yitzchadash, let the glory of God be extolled. The prayer had nothing to do with death at all, but rather giving thanks to God for the words of the rabbis, either those who died from the past or those who are still living today. What ended up happening is that it became more focused on those who have died, and then therefore the next thing is anyone who's died. But the prayer does not mention the word death at all. But then interestingly enough, they then half the prayer. So on page 36, you have what's called the Reader's Kaddish, or in Hebrew, Chetzi Kaddish, the half Kaddish. It has half the prayer, and basically this is used if you ever been to a traditional service, they do the Kaddish or the half Kaddish at least 4 times during the service, maybe even 5 times, because basically it's similar to going to a play, and you have a 3-act play, and the curtain goes up, and then it comes down for the next act. The Kaddish, the half Kaddish, the Reader's Kaddish, what it's called here, basically separates the acts of the service, the parts of the service. We've now finished acknowledging God's presence. We've now finished Baruch Hu. We've now finished acknowledging God here in this day, in this place, in this time. We've now acknowledged that we are a part of this people of Israel that now approaches the infinite one. And now we come to the Tefillah, page 37, the prayer in which we talk to God. Because now only am I worthy to talk to God. Why? Because number one is I've gotten God's attention. Okay? Because I've shown God that I'm a worthy subject. But also I showed God that I am a part of God's people, B'nai Yisrael, the chosen of Israel. You'll see why this becomes important. Page 37. The prayer opens up always with what words? You know these. Adonai, Sifatai Tevtach. The rabbis in the commentaries to the prayer book said that these words here are the most important words of the entire prayer. Why? Because guess what? I cannot enter the room until I open the door. I cannot open the door until I put the key in the lock. And so now I'm opening the door to talk to God. But guess what? How do I open the door? Adonai Sifatai Tevtach. Those words there, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart open my lips, that my mouth may declare your glory. Unfortunately, quite often we kind of go through those words quickly, but actually they're the most important words the rabbis say. Now, page 37, we have the opening part of the tefillah. Again, there is Jewish choreography. What you do is, the tradition is, on Baruch, you bend your knee, Atah, you come over once, and then Adonai again. So, Baruch Atah Adonai. Now, Larry is picking up the fact is what? I'm not bending forward, but I'm bending to my left. Okay, that is something that I do, and why? Because God is in front of me, right? Okay, and metaphorically, okay, or maybe really, God is in front of me. If God is in front of me and God is facing me, where is God's right side? On my left, okay? And according to Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, the right side of God is the side of chesed, unconditional love and kindness in the universe. And that's what I want to appeal to, right? Oh, King, don't step on me. Oh, I mean,
Wrong.
Phil, don't put your step on with your right foot. Okay. So therefore, also, according to Kabbalah, and this is not a class in Kabbalah, is chesed, kindness is on the right. On the left is gevurah, which is judgment. And in the middle is the balance between the two, harmony and peace. Abraham is chesed. Isaac is judgment. and Yaakov, Jacob, is in the middle. So Baruch Atah Adonai. If you ever watch me up there, Baruch Atah Adonai. Now, not to confuse you too much, but in Kabbalah, there is the belief that there are 4 dimensions always in existence on an infinite number of levels, 4 of them. Asiya, Yetzirah, Bria, and Atzilut, going from the most physical to the highest spiritual. So also there are 4 bowings, also at the same time. 1, 2, 3, and you'll notice I'll go 1 more. So that I am awakening, because guess what? You might say, Lila, that I'm just bowing. But actually, as I am bowing with kavanah, with intention, I am opening up my finite being to the infinite being that is inside of me, because guess what I have? Remember, I talked about this last week. I have a neshama, I have a soul. And that's my provider. That's my T-Mobile. Okay, okay. That's, yeah, my Verizon. Okay, my neshama is my provider that allows me to communicate with the infinite. Because God has given me that neshama, that's the connection. But just like my T-Mobile, my phone, I got to turn it on. So I'm turning on 1, 2, 3, 4, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So again, the choreography, Baruch Atah Adonai.
You do those at the end when you're facing the open Torah and you're blessing, you're going each individual Torah, you do that also at the end.
Yes,
Notice that.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I know.
Now, well, actually, I adopted that recently, because when I was going to, when I go to West Hampton Synagogue up north, the rabbi does it there, and I thought that's really nice. So I started doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I will admit to
one
that.
person noticed that.
Yeah.
But the Torah scrolls are not being referred to as Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov.
Well, 4 worlds, there could be 4
But-
worlds.
But,
But
yeah,
on the other
it's
hand, up
not-
north, I had 9 Torah
And
scrolls.
then, if you do that, then you go 50.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But up north, we had 9 Torah scrolls, and 4 of them I couldn't reach. So, okay, you have to be careful what you read into things. Now, notice there's a Baruch, for those of you who know Hebrew, on page 37, you have Baruch Atah Adonai, right? And we'll start that one. And then notice on the last paragraph, you are a king and a helper, a savior and shield. Blessed is the Lord, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Abraham. You have a second Baruch Atah.
Mhm.
On both of those, you do the bowing. Okay, now let's stop for a second. You are now approaching, you approach God. You have shown yourself to be a worthy subject, but all of a sudden you're going to talk to God. And then the next set of prayers is during the weekday. You start to ask God for money, for financial success, because you need that. You ask God for good health. You ask God for peace. And some people have said to me, why should God listen to me? Why should God grant anything that I even ask? What am I? Nothing. In the Perkei Avot, in the Mishnah, one rabbi was a bit extreme, and he said, guess what? Basically, I'm simply food for worms when I die. That's all I am. I started from a drop of semen, and I ended up as food for worms. So what right do I have to talk to God about anything? Who am I? Who am I anyway? Okay. What am I? But guess what? Number one is, as many of the alcoholics, NINA, OAA, all those things, Overeaters Anonymous, all of them teach, if you have, I'm not actually telling you if you've been in these groups, teach a very important lesson, and that is God doesn't make junk. But guess what? I know that. You know why I know that? Because I'm a Jew. I know God doesn't make junk because God created Jews, and Jews ain't junk, no matter what anyone says. And therefore, notice what the prayer says. We praise you, Lord our God, and God of all generations, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob, great, mighty, and all that. So therefore, why do I have the right to ask God anything? Because I'm a member of the tribe. That's why. Right, Doreen? Right, Doreen? Yes. Yeah, she's saying yes. She's not gonna have. I'm a member of the tribe, and that's my right by birth or for those who've converted. And that's a very powerful thing because guess what? Many people I have met in my life who don't feel worthy to speak to God. And they say that to me. Who am I? Why should God listen to me? There are 8 billion people on this planet. Why should God listen to me whatsoever?
Because you're the one speaking.
Well, because that person is one speaking. That person. But guess what? According to this, guess what? Because we're a member of the tribe.
Hmm.
Now you might say, well, wow, that's very prejudiced. Okay, what about the Palestinians? What about the Christians? What about the Buddhists? Well, we can expand this to say anybody, but remember, this is a Jewish service written for Jews. And no need to apologize, that's what it is. If you go to Catholic Church, their services are written for Catholics, okay? This is our service, and it speaks to a very important and basic feeling that people do have. They're unworthy before the infinite. But again, what's the purpose of all this? To bring the infinite into the finite. Okay. And then you have this next part of the service is where you ask God for all these different kinds of things. And then simply to say, after that part of the service is over, at the end of the service, okay, you're leaving God's presence. And so when you do the words, oh, say shalom, you again have choreography. You take 3 steps backwards, oh, say shalom, bim romav, hu yaseh shalom, orlenu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru amen. Okay, there's all these different choreographies expressing. Again, 3 times you bow. Osei, or steps, shalom, bim romav, hu yaseh shalom, orleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru now. You've left God's presence, but you don't really want to leave God. So you take 1 step forward to say, you know something, I'm still here. Okay. There's a great rabbinic story in which this person wants to speak to the king of the kingdom. So he goes to the palace and he knocks on the door. But that day it turned out to be that the king had given all of his servants off. So he was the only one in the palace. And he was way back in the gardens, wherever he was back there somewhere. So the guy's knocking on the door, but the door doesn't open. So he says to himself, boy, I guess the king's not in the palace today. I guess the king's off today. So he starts to walk away and he leaves. And just as he's leaving the property, the king, who finally heard his knocking, opens the door and looks around and says, well, no one's here. I guess I just heard it, but I made it up. In Judaism, you might say, why should I be praying 3 times a day? Why should I do any of this? Because number 1 is you could say this is what Jews do. Number 2 is you could say this is what we're commanded to do. And we are commanded to pray 3 times a day. However, the other part of it is, the fact is, guess what? You got to be there. If you want God to be here for you, you got to be there for God. And that's what this whole thing's based upon. The end of the service, of course, just as we began, it ends with what? Olenu. Olenu l'shabeach. It's a prayer in which we express our belief in the greatness of God. We bow our heads before you, O God, King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. V'anachnu korim. We bow before you once again, and then you leave God's presence. And so every single service has basically the same structure. For those of you who ever studied music appreciation, whatever, I remember every symphony is written with the same structure, okay? Just differences. Every concerto is written the same structure. Every sonnet has a certain structure to it, okay? You can write any poem you want to, but you can't call any poem you want a sonnet. A sonnet has a certain number of lines and I forget what exactly all is, but it's a step thing. You can call anything you want to, but it does have to fit a certain thing. Every service has this structure, recognizing God's presence, bringing it down to the moment in time, bringing it to part of the people of Israel, talking to God, and then saying goodbye. Every single service, what simply changes is the specifics. There are differences between the morning service and the afternoon, and evening and the afternoon. The afternoon service is only the middle part talking to God. Whereas the evening and the morning, because we're commanded to pray the Shema twice a day, when you wake up and when you go to sleep at night. But you're commanded to do the tefillah part, the avot thing, 3 times a day. Now, in Orthodox traditional Judaism, you have to go to a minyan to say these prayers. You can't do them on your own. On the other hand, in Reformed, you can say them anytime you want to, anywhere you want to, and to make them a part of your life. You can say them standing and bending and whatnot, or sometimes if I'm riding my bicycle in the afternoon, I'll do them while I'm riding my bike. Okay, because guess what? God is everywhere, right? I especially want God on my bicycle ride, especially down here.
Yeah, you better say them. when you're
Anyway,
on your bike.
okay, so that is the way the prayer book works in a general way. Does anyone have any questions about this?
There are certain prayers that must be in each service, though, like you have to, is one. It
Yeah.
Must be in every service.
No, afternoon and morning, after morning and nighttime,
Okay,
not afternoon. Right,
and like the Mikamoka is in each prayer.
Not the
each-
afternoon.
Each service.
right. Because you don't say the Shema in the afternoon service, only evening and morning. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so to finish all of this off, we can put the books back, we're done with that, okay?
Is the cottage, Mourner's cottage said in every?
Yes, that's the way to include the service. And that's developed for many reasons, in many ways. But basically you'd have to say, we always think about our loved ones. And obviously, one of the main functions, for better or for worse, that people do come to temple, sadly enough, is to say Kaddish. Yeah. I remember when we were living in Brooklyn, and I get off the subway, the L, and we lived on Ocean Parkway, and I'm walking the 4 blocks to our apartment on Ocean Parkway, and you walk by, especially Brooklyn, you like walk by 3 shuls. I mean, and at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, hey, you Jewish, come on in, we got to say Kaddish, because they need 10 men to say Kaddish. And why? Because someone lost a love, someone's loved one died. Yeah. Okay, now, certainly, and I think one of the challenges of Judaism, and we kind of put ourselves into a bad situation, a challenging situation, and that is we don't require you to believe in anything at all. To become a Catholic, a Christian, you got to believe, okay? You have to believe, because after all, the word Christian, the root of it is Christ. You have to believe that Jesus was the Christ, the Messiah. There's no question. Okay, and if you don't, you're not. Okay, that's it. I mean, I'm sure that there are Christians who claim they're Christian and don't believe in Christ as Jesus as the Christ. But then they're really just kidding themselves, because then you're not a Christian anymore. I don't know what you are. You're just like, you're like getting presents on Christmas or something like that. But the fact is, you're not a Christian anymore, which is why a Christian is not born a Christian. They must become a Christian by baptism or by confirmation, right? Yeah, they have to be made a Christian. We got a big problem as Jews, with going back to the first class, and that is you're Jewish unless you convert, and even conversion, we don't really ask belief system questions. Well, to some degree we do, but if you're born Jewish, you're Jewish. You don't have to believe in anything. You don't have to go to shul in your whole life, and whatnot. We talked about this before, and that's a big problem. Because then the question becomes and there are so many people who don't come to temple or sit here in temple and say, what is this all about? It doesn't mean anything to me, because they don't what? They don't believe in anything beyond themselves on any level. And then, by the way, not just congregants, but also rabbis, okay? Which is why my workshop at my convention this year was to believe or not to believe with rabbis, okay? So the question becomes who is God? And just like all the other things that I've talked about over these weeks, I can't really tell you this is what Judaism believes, and that's it. Okay, Judaism makes things very difficult for us, because you got to study, and then you have to say to yourself, what does this all mean to me? Where do I fit into all of this? There is no question. In the Bible, God is this transcendent creator being, okay, and the Bible's challenge also, which makes it a little bit more difficult, is that God almost sounds like a person. And this is called anthropomorphisms. God talks, God walks, God feels, God's angry, God loves. What does that all mean? What is that? Because you know that God doesn't walk and talk like we do, but how does God communicate with us then? Okay. So on one level, I say we all have to find the path that makes sense for us. And going back to that prayer that we looked at a few moments ago, the Avot, it's very interesting. It says Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob. And the rabbis to the commentary to the prayer book asked that exact question. Why doesn't it not say Elohei Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov? Why does it repeat God every time? And that is because Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, each one of them had different experiences of God in their lives. So therefore, you can then say, well, then God is being made up. Okay, how many people have said this to me? Well, we created God because we need God. We need to believe that there's something watching over us, etc. Well, if that is true, then guess what? Then coming to temple doesn't make sense. Okay, if God is you, then what is the point of it all? We might as well just go to like Carol said, Unitarianism, where they read affirmations. Okay, which is good. Okay, nothing wrong. Okay. My grandma Paula, God, she's a rest in peace, died at the age of 92. Until the day she died, she said, Steve, she didn't call me Rabbi, okay? So the day that's a joke. Okay, until the day she died, she said to me, Stephen, I know you're gonna be very upset with me, but I don't believe in God. And I said to Grandma Paula over and over again, is that you actually do, but you don't call it God. Because she was such a good person and a loving person and a very bright woman. She was born in 1890 in Brooklyn and actually graduated Hunter College. And as at the age she's supposed to graduate, I mean, she was obviously way ahead of her time and raised 3 children. Okay, and just amazing. But why didn't she didn't believe in what we call God, what she called God, because she went to Hebrew school and Reformed synagogue. And Brooklyn Temple, what was it? Union Temple, right on Eastern Parkway. And the fact is that she was told that God is this overweight guy sitting on a throne with a white beard, sort of like a looking Santa Claus, I guess you'd say, telling people you're good and you're bad. Okay, sounds like Santa Claus. Telling you now, making sure you're naughty or nice. God is coming. No, it doesn't. Okay, and that's what she reacted to. But the fact is, in the Bible, that's the image almost that you get of God, okay? This divine being that is rewarding and punishing people for the way that they behave or misbehave. But let me ask you a question. Is that really so bad? Well, we could say because some of the punishments seem to be out of place, right? Okay, if we get very specific. Holocaust, October 7th in Israel, whatever. But the fact is that by that idea, it means that guess what? Just like our parents, and again, this is modeled basically more or less on the image of a parent and a child, is that guess what? Why does God care about what we do? Because God what? Loves us. Why does a parent punish a child? Because God loves that child. Why does a parent reward that child? Because hopefully that parent loves that child. I'm not talking about obviously abuse. And so to ask yourselves then, what is God and who do we pray to? Now, I'm going to, this is that book I should hopefully, anyone have questions about the book? You read it, maybe?
I'm reading it.
Okay, yeah.
Not yet.
Doreen, go ahead.
Doreen, you have a question?
Oop,
Oh, hold on a second.
need to unmute you. Oh, you're just saying you have it and you're reading it.
Okay.
I
When, to
think it
me,
was very well done.
I'm just gonna use myself as an example, not,
I think he's
Also-
about to
also-
say something.
Go ahead, Doreen.
No, I just said that I'm sure I'm one of many, Rabbi, who read it and feel that it was awesome.
oh, thank you.
Lola, I noticed that you're on as well. Do you
Oh,
have
hi,
any
Lola.
questions or comments?
Where is she?
She's not on screen, but I've been watching and
Oh, okay.
and just-
Um,
yeah, she's,
so to me,
hi,
I,
good. You want,
Hi,
hi Lola,
Lola.
hi.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, okay. I was for some reason on mute. I don't know why. Yeah, no, I'm just I'm listening. No
Okay.
questions so far.
I've always had a belief in a God outside of me that has been always a part of my life. And God has manifested itself to me in many different ways. So that I've seen God in everything that happens to me or other people in my life, and also why certain things have happened to me, or I have taken on things that are quite unexplainable. Some of these things I've talked to you about, reincarnation, etc. But the first chapter here, when I was 12 years old, and raking leaves in my parents' backyard in Queens, in Rockaway, for those Rockaway, Queens, and I heard a voice from outside of me telling me to become a rabbi. And I really, to this very day, I don't believe, as someone could say, that it was my own mind I heard the voice, but I actually believe that it was a voice coming from outside of me. Now the question then becomes is, well, maybe it wasn't. But the minute you open yourself up to the possibilities of a real presence of God, all of a sudden, every single moment becomes a wow moment and a moment for gratitude. So that no matter what, you then are open to taking on a way of life in which you are willing to open up yourself to everything that is there, because all the possibilities come from the divine. I've come, of course, over the years to very much appreciate Kabbalah of Jewish mysticism. And again, this is another course which I will eventually give here in the temple of Kabbalah. But Kabbalah is the only system which actually explains how God works in the world, how God created it, and how God makes it happen. And the idea is that the infinite being of the divine, called in Kabbalah, or Ein Sof, the light of that which is endless, the infinite one, is able, through a series of almost filters down this light which we could not in any way or shape or form be able to be with, because we'd be absorbed in it, like walking into the core of a nuclear reactor. We would be nothing in a second. Is that becomes manifest in small and special ways in our lives, meaning the sparks of the divine are in everything, in every single moment of our lives. And when we understand that, it opens up doors to be able to then take the infinite to the finite, and the finite opening itself up to the infinite. A poem I wrote in this book. A footstep, this footstep is the footstep of God. This word is the word of God. A moment, this moment is the moment of God. This thought, a thought, any thought and every thought too is the thought of God. For all is God and within God, as God is each thing, and each thing is God and seen as God, felt as God, known as God, and then the infinite itself becomes the most small of the smallest, and this then in turn implodes into the largest, until what is large loses itself into that which is in all selves and all things, and then all is all, and all is all, and life goes on into the endless, and the endless resides here. So the here is the infinite. And I quoted this, I think, on Friday night, Walt Whitman's words, a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars. And if you can see God in a leaf of grass, then you truly then become a spiritual person. And then you realize, let me see if I can, this might be a little more complicated. Look, okay, this interesting book here. This is called Seekers of the Face of God. But it said something very interesting. And with this, I'm going to stop because I got to get moving here. Okay. God, who is present, with whom one can establish the kind of emotional and sensory connection that can only exist in the face-to-face encounter of seeing and being. Again, God who is present, with whom one can establish the kind of emotional and sensory connection that can only exist in the face-to-face encounter of seeing and being. There is a beautiful line in The Phantom. To look into the face of someone you love is to look into the face of God. This is why, when I sat with that boy reading the Psalms to him, who was in a coma with the 40 tumors, it was when finally my mind calmed down. And for the first moments in that encounter, I felt his hand in mine and mine in his. I then felt God's presence there. Because the sensory of feeling and touch became really, I touched his soul, and his soul touched mine. At the very same time as they recognized the mysterious and sublime being that dwells deep within, behind the face, behind the surface, is the very being of God. And this is what I try to teach, this is what I try to live to the best of ability. Yeah. Do I get involved in the crap of, okay. In the crap of life? Of course, we all do. Okay? Yeah. But on the other hand, when we can bring ourselves back into this, then truly, what is our task? To bring the infinite into the finite, because guess what? Everything is the doorway to the holy. If you remember in the Kedusha, there's a prayer in the morning service only called the Kedusha, and that's when we stand before the ark, and Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzavaot, Malok Kol Haaretz Kevodo, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The fullness of the whole earth is God's glory. Do you notice the choreography there? You're supposed to stand together with feet together and Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Okay, we are lifting ourselves up to the infinite. And later on in the service, there's also a time of Kadosh, of holiness. And just as you're lifting yourself up, you're bringing the holiness down. And that, I think, is really, if you can come away with anything, is to ask yourselves who God is in your life. And for the Jewish life, who is God when you pray, whether it's here, whether it's home, in the car, wherever it is, number one. But also, and when you live life, where is God? And if you think, well, maybe God is in everything that I do, and that I don't do. And what does it all mean? Well, that's the next step. To think about it, to contemplate it, and to make it not a goal, but just to enjoy it. Because God has given us this time together in order to open ourselves up to these possibilities, the infinite and the finite. And then it's our job as the finite creature to open ourselves into the infinite, which is, you learned from the other lesson, and that is can affect our neshama always into eternity. Amen. Okay, everyone, that's it. Show's over.
Yeah, I wish you'd do something with Kabbalah.
Yeah, well, no,
It's
yeah,
not over.
yeah, no, it's never over.
Not
Okay,
over.
No.
good. good.
Okay,
Yeah,
everyone, see you, Doreen.
Oh,
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Okay.
Rabbi.
Sorry.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And by the way,
Bye,
those of you who bought this book, you wanted me to sign, like, so to speak, I'll be glad to. Doreen,
That
I'll
would
sign
be
your
nice.
book.
I'll have to bring it in.
Okay.
You're gonna have to sign my iPad.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank
Oh, goodness.
Bye, Lola, you have to talk to me. I have to
you.
call you.
Lola, we would love to see you when you're able.
Bye, take care, shalom.
Bye, Lola.
Bye, Lola.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Bye.
Okay, you guys can stay. I must rush out.